part of what's always in my head is like, especially when I talk to younger people, it's like just reminding them that politics didn't always suck. It wasn't always about like one guy, like the worst person in the world, upsetting you every day. Like it can be inspirational.
It's getting farther and farther away.
I know,
though,
but we can do good things. You can help
suck.
people. You can find some core decency. We can get back there.
Welcome to the Best People Podcast. This week's guests are setting the bar for all of us aspiring podcasters. They don't just cover the news. They don't just founders. They change the weather in our politics. Everyone looks to them when something big happens. I look to them when something big happened in my career when I started this podcast. It's an honor to have on the Best People Podcast two of the founders of Crooked Media, two of the hosts of Pod Save America, Jon Favreau and Tommy Vietor. Thank you, guys.
Wow, that's very nice.
What an intro. We don't get that kind of intro anywhere.
See, if I had to do it twice, I wouldn't have gotten all that in there. But I have
you.
my little elevator spiel. You know, a lot of things pop up. I go and look for you guys and listen to you guys. I guess my first question for you is, how do you cut right to the bone with everything?
Well, we try to have our morning meetings before the podcast, to probably like you guys do at MSNBC, to figure out what we want to cover that day. And I think that, look, we started this in 2017 not knowing that we would ever be professional podcasters.
Is that a word?
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It might be an oxymoron.
Yeah. If you want to repel a woman or clear a room, tell them you're in professional podcasting.
But I think because we just always thought it was going to be a hobby, we wanted to sort of narrow the distance between how we spoke with each other and our friends who've been in politics about politics in private with how people talk about politics in public. And so, in terms of like cutting to the truth of it, we just try as hard as we can to talk about it in a way that we would, talk about it off mic.
Yeah, I think the best episodes are when you kind of forget that this thing is going to go out. And sometimes that happens to me. Like, people will be like, friends of mine from real life will be like, oh, I heard you guys talking about blah, blah, blah thing. I was like, oh my God, you heard that? You have that reaction.
Yeah.
But I think that's good. That's healthy.
What is it about, because I would say at a mission level, we try to put on television the same things that we say on our calls or in our meetings, because as you guys know, sometimes the distance narrows whether you want it to or not. But what is it about the intimacy or the obligation you have to someone maybe just listening to you in their ears to make sure that there's no fluff or spin?
I mean, I think television, I still view it as like rarefied air. These are important people who are anchors. They are well known. They are
Who?
famous.
What are you talking about?
You, like your show. Like, I watch TV. Like look, maybe that's muscle memory, right? And I'm of a certain age where that's changing for people that are younger than us. But I think I still view it that way. And I think with a podcast, you have someone literally in your ears. You feel like you know them. I both experienced this as a host, where people come up to you and they kind of like jump into a conversation that they heard you have earlier that day. And I've also done this to people. Like, the first time I met Bill Simmons, I was trying to be like slap happy, be like, tell me about House and like, what's up with Uncle Sal? It's like, I don't know this guy. He doesn't know me. So there's something like weirdly intimate about it that I think is engaging and approachable, because it should be, because it's like not that impressive because it's a podcast, but I think it helps you build that connection.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable now doing TV, but still when I'm doing an interview, and I think it's the time too, and the format, right? Which is like, that if you have a cable hit, that you've got like 5 minutes, 7 minutes, to get everything in about the questions you're being asked. And so you try to think in, like we've all coached politicians, sound bites and,
right.
Get the topic sentence at the beginning and all that kind of, and with the podcast, you stop thinking about that because it goes on for a while. You don't necessarily see that you're on screen all the time and you're just talking with your friends around a table.
Yeah. I mean, Nicole, you'll appreciate this. Like, the first time I ever did TV, it was on one of those White House trips to Asia where you're gone for 10 days and you don't sleep for 3 of them and you're loaded up with like Ambien and Provigil and God knows what else and just trying to like survive. And it was my last trip, and I like wanted to sort of like see if I could do TV. So I was like, hey, Chuck, will you interview me? Chuck Todd, like nicest guy, like not intimidating. And so
I made the same request from
so like they're doing a live shot on the roof somewhere, like we're probably in like Bali or something. And my leg was shaking so hard that I'm making the like the cameras move and stuff. And again, Chuck is like, it's okay, man. You
He's
don't
so
have to-"
nice.
You know, he's
Yeah.
like, I'll edit this for you. But like that is just like inherent in the medium, right? There's something that we put on a pedestal.
Don't you think the viewers are over it? I think that you guys are pushing us, at least those of us paying attention, to be more blunt, to be less produced, and to put some skin in the game in a way that's probably pretty healthy for television.
I think so for sure, and I always see that when I tune into MSNBC. We also have like Fox on in our office just to check it out, and you can tell that that's what they do over there. Like the part, I mean, it's always been like this, but they've really gone full bore into like entertaining people,
yeah.
and so they've got the five, and and they're just sitting around joking, and sometimes it's like even when it's not about politics, it's like a little funny and it's loose, and you can tell the difference when you're switching between. And you guys have this on MSNBC as well. There's like a large panel conversation of everyone in person. It's like fun, it's light, whatever, and then it switches to an anchor reading the news, and you can just feel the difference in a way that I don't think you could 5, 10, 15 years ago.
And with Fox, you could tell there's a run of show, right?
Yeah.
Because like the other day we're watching, and you could tell at the top of the hour, there was a memo that went down that said, at the top of the hour, we are attacking Jen Psaki for this completely benign joke about Usha Vance. And it happened over and over and over again. Like 6 minutes in, they're going to take a big whack at Jen Psaki. And it's like, like Fox is more formulaic in that sense, but it's also much more entertaining. Like they basically have like New York Post headlines under the screen all the time. I don't know. I think we could all learn from it probably.
Well, let me ask you about that. I mean, it's what, year 9 of the Trump story, and I know Democrats hate this question, but why isn't there something on the left or on the pro-democracy side, which is such a bigger audience, or is that why it's a bigger audience that doesn't all agree on what is entertaining?
You know, I think the left ecosystem is developing quickly. Like it didn't exist, and now there's a lot of folks that have some really big accounts. Like we're trying to build, a counterweight to Fox News. For a long time, that was podcast focused, but we've really been focused on YouTube development and growth because that's where we're seeing all the numbers kind of explode. But there is this growing ecosystem, and frankly, we're trying to bring a lot of those people to CrookedCon, the event we're doing November 7th in DC, to sort of like help build it further.
I also think there's there's something about the political context right now that makes it tricky, and we like feel this tension all the time. There's a ton of awful, scary news to talk about every day, which makes it harder to joke around or to present it in a way that may reach someone who is not a political junkie like all of us. And I do think that the Democrats' challenge right now, and has been for some time, is like reaching beyond the political junkies to people who vote but don't necessarily pay close attention to politics. And so, it's just a delicate balance figuring out what's going to appeal to people who aren't necessarily paying attention all the time, while still making sure that we cover the news and talk about it in a way that is commensurate with sort of the urgency of the challenge right now.
I mean, that is an articulation of the asymmetry, though. I mean, I think people like Tim Miller and people that are new to the Democratic Party's coalition are evangelical about it and are hurt and wounded and shocked when you see the poll numbers with the Democratic Party's approval rating almost as low as their, but like you find it shocked. Like, how could that be? What is that about? I mean, and how does this broader pro-democracy movement help fix that? Or do we hurt it? I mean, is that part of the problem, that the base is suspicious of people like me?
I don't think you hurt. I mean, my view is that you don't hurt it at all, and then it's very additive, right? And I think in this moment that if you are watching the news and watching, especially the second Trump term unfold, and you are responding to it genuinely with how you feel and what you're worried about, based not only on your experience as an observer of politics, but as someone who has been in politics and been in government in the past, then I think that's all you can really do, and that's valuable, right? And I think that there's a lot of people out there who, when they hear that former Republicans are alarmed about what Trump is doing, it's going to matter to them. But I also think that the asymmetry also sort of manifests itself in, I always think about that, in 2024, Trump said, oh, in 4 years, you're not going to have to vote anymore. And, you can take that two ways. One, like, he's going to cancel elections. But I think the other way is him being like, I'm going to be in there. I'm going to take care of everything. And all of you guys don't have to pay attention to politics. And we can treat it as a joke. And it's like, it's a cynicism that sort of, melts into nihilism at one point. And it's all funny and who cares? And so, like, this is entertainment for you all. You can go back to your lives and don't worry about it. And our job is the opposit of that, right? We're trying to tell people you actually do need to care. You actually do need to be involved. And, that takes more sacrifice on behalf of the people who are paying attention. And so it can't be as light and fun as the Republican side, though we have to figure out a way to make the struggle and the movement joyful.
I mean, you're getting at something that I think every one of us grapples with, which is how much of what he says do you cover as, catastrophic if it comes to pass, and how much of it do you hold up against the very public displays of incompetence that is a hallmark of 2.0? I mean, to me, the trickiest thing about covering him is this collision between brazen incompetence and brazen malevolence. And I wonder how you balance those two things out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lesson we all learned early on, probably in 2017, 2018, is we can't cover everything he says, especially if it's outrageous, if sort of outrage is the only outcome of what he said. We have to focus as much as we can on what he has been doing. And I think you're starting to see why that focus is important. Like, look, I'll be honest with you. When I first heard about the reports of the East Wing getting torn down, I was like, I don't care. I just don't care. Pay for it how you want. Let these tech guys bribe you, like, whatever, build the friggin' East Wing. I'm focused on other things. But voters are really bothered by it. Like, they don't like that he's tearing down a house that he doesn't own. They don't like that it's paid for by these private special interests. And I think that should be a lesson to us, and that surfacing stories like that, the corruption, the double dealing. I mean, like, he just pardoned this tech billionaire named CZ who runs this company called Binance, whose company was facilitating money laundering for ISIS, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. It was doing sanctions violations with Iran. They were allowing the platform to be used with child sex abuse material websites, like the most disgusting things you can imagine. And Trump pardoned this guy. And like in any other administration, that would be a deal breaker of a scandal probably. But for Trump, like, he does so many outrageous things that stuff like that can get washed away. And I think it's incumbent on us to surface those things, to talk about them, to highlight them over and over again, just so people hear about it.
I try, and here in year 400 of Trump, I try to spend less time now trying to guess what his motivations are, or the motivations of the people who work for him. Like, is it incompetence? Is it malice? And just focus on the effects of what they're doing. Because I think ultimately that is what's going to matter to people who are going to be affected by these decisions. And I've done plenty of guessing. We still do, like, why is he doing this over the years? But I try to focus more on the effects of what he's doing, because you can have plenty of authoritarians who are incompetent fools, and they can still do a lot of damage.
What do you sort of wake up and feel most drawn to? I mean, I for years have covered the assaults on the rule of law, and the indictments of Comey and Tish James over the objections of sort of MAGA adjacent career prosecutors, to me, is so galling. And then the ICE stuff. I mean, I just can't believe we live in a country where a person on their way to the market could be disappeared. Not just arrested and questioned and brought to court, but actually, like, disappear before they come home with the groceries to make dinner. Those two stories are like just the two poles of what for me seem to be the most abrupt and jarring and dangerous pieces. What are the sort of poles of Trump 2.0 that pull both of you guys in first in the morning when your eyes are open and you stare at your phone?
It's the ICE raids for me. And I'm
John's a big fan.
I'm a big fan. Love the ICE raids. No, and I'm like I'm surprised by that, because it's not it was something I was worried about, but the way he's going about it and the way they're going about it is, and I do think it connects with the Comey stuff and the political prosecutions, because we've had this challenge over the last several years of talking to voters about attacks on democracy, attacks on the rule of law, because it doesn't really land with people. People who see even Jim Comey be prosecuted, and they're like, well, that's Comey, that's not me, that's not going to happen to me. And, first you start seeing the ICE stuff and you're like, well, those are undocumented immigrants. That's not going to happen to me. Well, now they're going after American citizens, right? And it's hard to read those stories and not think, oh, it's going to stop with immigrants. It's going to stop with Jim Comey and Letitia James and all the rest of us are going to be fine. Like, I just don't think that's the case. And what I don't understand is why, like, more people in the country aren't hair on fire about this. And at the very least, more politicians aren't talking about it every single day.
Right, because if they do what they did to Senator Padilla, if they do what they're doing to alder people in Chicago, there is obviously no line for them. And so this adaptive mental trick that Americans understandably are engaged in, like, oh, that doesn't affect me, has already been disproven.
Yeah, it's a completely lawless organization. I mean, look, the ICE stuff stuns me as well. I mean, I basically wake up on Mondays, it's sort of like entirely focused on domestic politics. And then Tuesdays, I record a show that's about foreign policy and national security. And that's the stuff I worked on in the White House. And I'm old enough at this point that your brain develops grooves that I think are like your comfort zone. So you go to that stuff. I'm very focused on what's happening in the Caribbean and off the coast of Venezuela. I mean, the strikes on these boats are shocking. It is extrajudicial murder. Full stop. There is no legal authority to kill these people. That's the case because when we captured 2 survivors the other day, we, the United States government, they returned them to their home countries rather than prosecute them. That's how flimsy the legal case is for these murders. And on top of that, there's report after report after report that Donald Trump wants Venezuela's oil and that Marco Rubio wants to run a regime change operation in Venezuela because he thinks that Venezuela is supporting Cuba and that the key to toppling the Cuban government as well is taking out Venezuela. And I just think like that is likely to be Libya 2.0, where you have a country with a lot of resources, but is split and factionalized, and there's well-armed militia groups. And you could see a scenario where we topple the Maduro government, who's a bad guy, but there's a lot of bad leaders out there. And then the impact just ripples throughout South and Central America and leads to another migration crisis. So I'm very worried about that as well.
When you look at the strategic frame around ending this period, you sort of already have the preconditions, right? So what he's doing is already wildly unpopular. You've got the Republicans totally hostage to things that there are decades of tape of them opposing all the policies they're now greenlighting, whether it's tariffs, whether it's extrajudicial strikes by the military. I mean, what does sort of the moment look like to you? Are we waiting for a leader to emerge? Are we waiting for the shock to wear off? Like, what phase of this do you think we're in?
I mean, I think the first phase is winning these elections in 2025, Virginia, New Jersey, the New York mayoral race. And then the midterms in 2026 is going to be huge. And I'm very worried about the trend on both sides, but Democrats are responding to further gerrymander these states because I think that dynamic is what leads Republicans to refuse to ever peel off from supporting Trump because they're all more worried about a primary than a general election, where the vast majority of them are. But we have to win the midterms, and then Democrats need to step up. I mean, I think that Trump's numbers have gone down, but Democrats' numbers are in the toilet, and people need to understand who we are, what we're for, what we're fighting for. Some of that will come from the Democratic primary as we go into 2028, but some of it is just like rank and file members doing things that matter, like Chris Van Hollen going to El Salvador to meet with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, or speaking out on the war in Gaza in a way that showed courage and leadership. It's like got to be more moments like that, I think.
Yeah, I think you can understand to some extent right now why a party with just about no power in Washington and that's basically leaderless is struggling. But it's also like, the Democratic Party has lower favorable ratings than any time since I've been alive. And I think that, people compare this to after Bush won re-election in 2004 with the Democratic Party. But like even then, Barack Obama had won and was giving national speeches and was being talked about as a candidate. Hillary Clinton was being talked about as a national candidate. The people who were running in 2008 were out there. And I do think right now in this context and the fact that Trump is unpopular, but also he has a ton of power and he's using it in ways that no president has used it. So it means that you need a leader who's even more charismatic, or several leaders in the Democratic Party who are even more charismatic than ever before. And, there's a fight going on in the party about positioning and ideology, and I think that's a good argument to have and good debates to have. But to get people's attention nationally, like, you do need charismatic leaders. And I worry that we don't quite have that yet, or at least no one's broken through in a big way. And that's what we're going to, hopefully that ramps up as we get closer to 28 and you get a bunch of candidates, right? But that's what I think is holding people back right now. You need, you can build movements, and movements are really important, but you got to have someone to follow. And you got to have an alternative. If you're a voter who's unhappy with Trump and the Republican Party, you got to be like, okay, well, this person seems like that's a good alternative. And right now, we don't have that.
I guess the ex-Republican in me appreciates the psyops of what Gavin Newsom's doing. Like, you don't fight Trump with a more optimistic vision. You fight him by kicking him, I like the way Gavin Newsom's fighting, but I'm just not sure that that's in the cellular, longings of the Democratic base. I mean, who do you guys like, and what do you like that you're seeing out there?
I mean, I'm with you on what Gavin's doing. I think it's been very smart and savvy. And part of it is having fun on Twitter and the tone, but then part of it is having real power and then using it with Prop 50, which will redistrict California and blunt the impact of what's happening in Texas with their redistricting. So I think voters see that and they know, okay, this guy isn't just full of it, he's actually really doing something. Bigger picture, I don't know. No one's blowing me away. I feel like it's my job to
I hate that answer. I was hoping you'd be you just have your head in the sand, you dumb cable host.
No, you don't.
This and that.
You are better informed than 99.99% of people, and I think all of us are waiting for that moment of inspiration. It doesn't mean people are bad. I think there's great candidates out there. Pete Buttigieg is a great guy. He's really smart, doing important things. I don't know. I don't want to start listing because then you get in big trouble. But
I think we set up this what I've come to think is a false choice between a fighter or someone who's hopeful and positive and inspirational. And I think I don't even know if that's the axis. I think you need both. I think you can be both, right? I mean, Barack Obama was known for sort of hope and inspiration, but he could be pretty tough. And
I know.
And I was going to say, and in fact, you could tell, anyone on the Clinton campaign, anyone on the McCain campaign, people who've run against him can be like, he's known as hope and change and inspiration, but he can be really tough. And I think you can do both. And I think actually a Democratic leader needs to do both, because if all you're doing is you're out there kicking the shit out of Donald Trump every day, that is going to get you attention. It is going to excite people who are already Democrats. It's not necessarily going to excite people who voted for Donald Trump or who, thought about voting for Donald Trump, but are unhappy and are open to Democrats, right? They want more. They want a vision of where you want to take the country. And so I do think you have to do both. But to your point, how can you keep up and sustain the conversation? That is table stakes now for a nominee or for a candidate, right? Because we have now come of age with a president in Donald Trump who was, for better or worse, mostly worse, just tweeting all day long. You hear from him all day. He's in our faces constantly, right? And everyone's on social media. They get their news from social media, YouTube, everywhere else, where you are just seeing people talk like themselves all day long. They are authentic, they are casual, they are informal, and people now, I think, have come to expect from their politicians, from their leaders, you've got to be yourself, you've got to sound like you're just having a conversation with a friend, and you've got to be in our faces all the time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know who you are. And so I do think that whoever is going to emerge in 2028 is someone who's going to be so comfortable in every kind of setting themselves and not sound like a talking point robot machine.
And Nicole, I mean, you were a former comms professional too, like we were.
What does that mean anymore, right?
God only knows. I mean, can you think about all the meetings we all sat through where it's there's a
pointless
grid and there's message discipline and on Monday this and Trump
don't repeat the attacks and don't
Trump will do 3 ad hoc press conferences per day and it's all live and he riffs and he does it when times are good and he does it in the middle of the Epstein debacle and he's just that's just how he rolls and it's highly effective.
What do you make of the fact that there's this slow burn around, and it's serious? I mean, you hear that Trump and Levitt seem to be trying to get us to cover it, but of pulling President Barack Obama into their efforts to investigate the investigation into Russia's attack on the 2016 election. Is that the way to talk about it? I mean, I've heard, I think his name's Mike Davis, this right-wing agitator, talking about a grand jury
Total
in Florida.
lunatic.
You hear. I mean, Levitt has this diatribe from the podium in July, I think, laying out this grand conspiracy. She's reading from a piece of paper. I mean, do you think that they will present evidence to a grand jury against President Barack Obama?
I think sometimes Democrats, we call too many things a distraction when really it's just like Trump talking about what he wants to talk about. That to me was the ultimate moment of distraction. This was like in the worst moments of the Epstein fiasco. All of a sudden they rolled out the Obama did treason button and started hitting it for a couple weeks. Like, I don't know that we've heard about it much since. Maybe they will go after him. I think it's a lot easier for them to go after lesser known, less popular political figures than the extremely popular former president who literally no one in this country, except for the most brainwashed lunatics, think actually rigged an election against Donald Trump. But I mean, I guess they could try.
They're scared. I really like they realize that was politically. I think some of them realize, enough of them realize that is politically stupid. That you're right. Like, if you go after people who are, John Bolton's a great example, right? Which is like, who's coming to John Bolton's defense? Not Democrats and liberals necessarily. He wasn't a favorite there, right? And same with Comey, right? And so you can pick on people like that and start, but like they go to try to arrest Barack Obama or indict Barack Obama. They are going to like. They're going to have
Banana Republic
the most
shit.
popular living politician in the country.
Do you think there are enough people around him to slow that down?
Slow down. I don't know. I mean, I do think that like some people in the Obama administration that they're investigating, they will certainly try to go after them. John Brennan, people like that. And the question there is like, can you even get an indictment? Can you get it that far? Since some of these indictments, James, Comey, are incredibly weak. So they have to go about getting an indictment and indicting them on something, which some of this stuff is just like there's just nothing there.
And like most of these indictments are based on congressional testimony that was within 5 years to get past the statute of limitations questions. I mean, look, Trump is like kind of a feral political genius, right? He like every rally is a focus group. He figures out what plays and what doesn't. Yeah. I suspect he's smart enough to know that indicting Barack Obama probably wouldn't go well for him and he'll avoid it, but we'll find out. I shouldn't predict, but
yeah.
Do you welcome your old boss's role in helping in California with Prop 50? I mean, his voice is so missed, and I know he's choosing his spots carefully, but what do you make of the choices he's making about when and how to speak out?
I'm glad he did the Prop 50 thing. I think that was great. I'm glad he's campaigning in these final weeks. I do hope that he and his organization will make a bit of a strategic shift, which is, I understand like picking your spots, not weighing on everything, like that is a trap. But I think there's a challenge around elections, but then there's a Democratic Party brand problem that we are failing to address. And I would love to see him a part of the solution to that brand problem. And that could include like Barack Obama go on Joe Rogan. Why not? He could hang for 3 hours. It might not be a good time. You might get some weird questions about how actually the polio vaccine didn't work or something. But like, I don't know, go do it. Let rip.
No, you'd have to talk about the pyramids. The thing is, like, once you start listening to Joe Rogan, you realize that like the politics is such a little. I started listening to it.
Yeah.
It's like a smidge, and I listened for 3 hours. It was all about like the pyramid thing is like as big as politics, and I mean, so I think
the prep would be funny.
Prep would be funny, right? Like I could just imagine any normal person saying he's going to ask me about what.
The thing with him is like every time he gets back out, like knowing him, every time he gets back out on the trail to campaign, he's really into it. He does not seem like a person who feels like he's been forced to go there. Yeah. I think he realizes he's like, I'm a very successful Democratic politician. I care a lot about these issues. I care a lot about the country. I care a lot about what's happening to the country right now. I know he's very alarmed at what's happening right now. And I don't think the choice has to be do nothing or get out there every single day and be in Trump's face. Like there's a whole lot of space in between. And to Tommy's point that the Democratic branding and where the party should go, he's like particularly useful to talk about that. And I think just giving people like his argument is, or one of his arguments is like he's a big figure, right? And every time he gets out there and speaks, it doesn't allow for a new generation of Democrats to go out there and sort of grab the spotlight. and that is true in a sense. But in a vacuum, which is what we're in right now, I think we need every voice that has a huge platform, a lot of followers that people really respect, I think should be out there right now talking about this, because any way to break through to a lot of people who aren't political junkies, which Barack Obama speaking will do, I think could have a really important effect.
Well, you guys know better than me, but my sense is that his two of the red lines that might get him back out there were the military and the Department of Justice, and those lines have been crossed back and forth and back and forth. It seems that the things that he warned about in some of those most urgent speeches ahead of Election Day have come to pass.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, and I would imagine it'll be interesting to see what his events with Spanberger and Cheryl are like, because he tends to have a lot of the thoughts that, you know, we're all talking about, and then he just sort of uncorks at a campaign event, you know, when he's just out there feeling it. And so I'm interested to see what he if he goes off on those events.
How much of your time with him, for both of you, is sort of in your brain when you're either trying to pull things out of other people in the way that he pulled things out of you guys, or just in the way you see the world?
So I worked for him for 9 years. I started in the 2004 Senate race and then left in 2013. John and I left the same time. So I'm sure you dealt with this too. Like, I had to deprogram myself. I had to remember how to think for myself, because like my entire
Your spokesperson,
it was my DNA was like, this guy's political views became mine, and that overlap became very real. It took some time. I got better at it. I think what that experience does is it gives you empathy for how hard the job of governing is. It's very easy to take shots from the sidelines, and I do a lot of it. But, you know, you also realize, like, actually implementing these things, actually breaking through, actually convincing voters and winning elections and governing is really, really hard. And I think that comes through. I hope it does.
I have tried to deprogram myself, and I don't know if I've done it completely successfully. And it's not necessarily about the political views. Like, I, you know, look at a news story and form my own opinion, but in the way that I think about arguing, I think about persuading people, I think about like topics to choose, stories to tell. The way he talks and thinks is just, you know, I think because I spent so long with him and wrote with him, it's just like a part of me. And, you know, there's still times these days where we'll have made a point on the pod or said something, and then he says something, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's still, without knowing it, I'm like, we're still sort of channeling him without knowing it.
Isn't that a good thing, though? I mean, I guess what's funny coming from the other side is I would love to, you guys are talking about deprogramming yourself from the greatest political athlete of our lifetimes. I would love to, like, program myself.
Yeah, I mean, that's very kind of, I mean, he's an extraordinary communicator, speaker, decent human being, like, never yelled at me in 9 years. It's kind of insane when you think of other people's political experiences. I do think it's valuable to be able to say, with the benefit of hindsight, these were mistakes. You know what I mean? Like, the war in Libya, not the best idea. Surging a bunch of extra troops to Afghanistan, given the results we saw in 2021, in hindsight, like, was not the right thing to do, right? So I think just, like, being able to be candid about those things gives you credibility or just perspective to be smarter about stuff today.
What do you guys think about your own roles as sort of public figures? I like, it's clear that covering a public figure and Charlie Kirk, who paid with his life for being in the arena, was really, so it shook everybody. It shook all of us. You guys didn't try to hide that experience of being shaken by seeing political violence.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I think part of podcasting is, you know, we're in a studio, we're with each other, and you just talk all day and you don't really see yourself as a public figure all the time. And then something like that happens and you realize, like, you know, we do live shows and we go on the road, and it makes you think twice. In terms of the public figure stuff, I just think about, like, I feel like I have an obligation to people to, like I said, give them factual information and correct myself when I don't. And I feel like I have an obligation to use the platform I have to continue trying to persuade people who are with us to get involved and stay involved, and persuade other people and people who may not be with us to change their minds, you know. And I wake up every day thinking about, when I read the news, okay, well, how can I convince that person that this is a big deal and that we should do something about it who might not be completely on board? Like, what is the best way to persuade?
I mean, I think that might be like the mental illness of being former government workers or political operatives, right? I never feel like I'm just reading the news. Like I am still at my core a partisan, and now I don't even know a partisan what. I guess a pro-democracy partisan, but I want to bring people along, and if I can find this little kernel that I think might bring them along, I want to, make sure that part is abundantly clear. Do you think that's a weakness in the media bubble, that we should all have a stake in whether we remain only in a democracy is the First Amendment, and is it honored? Like, do you think the sort of old models of neutrality are outdated?
Probably a little bit, but I mean, I think there's real value to it. I have so much respect for reporters who wake up every day and file like 700 FOIAs and, like grind it out and call sources and bring the information that we then talk about. And I always want to just be like honest about that and like have some reverence for the fact that our work and like punditry basically is built off the backs of reporters who are nonpartisan or like just the facts and trying to do that work. I do think there's space, though, in a broader media ecosystem for people that are partisan and who are activist. And in addition to thinking about the need to persuade people, part of what's always in my head is like, especially when I talk to younger people, it's like just reminding them that politics didn't always suck. It wasn't always about like one guy, like the worst person in the world, upsetting you every day. Like, it can be inspirational.
It's getting farther and farther away.
I know, but we can do good things. You can help people. You can find some core decency. We can get back there and just like, Tim Miller once called us cloyingly optimistic or something along those lines. But you need a little of that.
Yeah, I think that I have come to appreciate the value of objective reporting even more over the years. Like, I think I was more of a media critic right after I got out of the White House, which I guess people in the White House, that's probably common. Yeah. But over the years, I've become less of a media critic, especially for sort of straight news reporting, because we just desperately need that information now, and we need people in the country to trust that it is truthful and real, and that's obviously a huge problem. And I think if there weren't people who also felt comfortable offering opinion and analysis on television and everywhere else that we watch and consume news now, that would be a problem. But there's no shortage of pundits out there like us who are offering people's opinions. So I do think that people who work for the Times, the Post, CNN, wherever it may, MSNBC, wherever it may be, like, we really, really need some original like reporting right now, because people don't trust anything anymore.
What do you think about when you look at your kids? Like, my kid is old enough. I have a teenager and I have a baby. So I've got one who President Obama was the first person he knew as president. And when Trump won in 2016, he said, "But we still have President Obama, right?" And it was right. It was true. Like, it was a transition. I was like, yeah. And then he was just too young for the first Trump years. But I do think like they might know kids who die of measles. What do you think about as parents?
I mean, it changes everything. It's completely cliche, but it does. I mean, I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. So after the Charlie Kirk assassination, I mean, I saw all these videos of, him and his daughter, and it just absolutely gutted me, because I just imagined the loss that those kids are experiencing, that his wife was experiencing, what it would be like to be in his shoes. And that honestly drove my entire reaction. I just, frankly, was kind of, I understand the politics of it, but like, to me, that was the thing that hit me first. In terms of how it influences politics, like, it makes you rethink everything. Like, what are these kids going to study? What are these kids going to do for a living? What kind of country are they going to grow up in? The RFK stuff, like that, like it genuinely freaked me out. Like, we had to have a conversation with our pediatrician because there was some measles outbreak. Like, should we move James's schedule up? Is that a bad idea? Mm-hmm. Is that unsafe? I know I have close family members that frankly have been swayed by the RFK kind of MAHA anti-vax movement and the impact there. So, it changes everything, and it just ups the stakes of everything we do and talk about every day, because I want them to grow up in this country too and feel safe and be healthy and have a meaningful life ahead of them.
I have a almost 2-year-old and a very precocious 5-year-old.
I think in
who
a
was-
cast, right?
Yeah, yeah. The younger one was in the cast. The older one also just had a forehead injury.
Yeah, John had
So-
a week.
Yeah, both of them in the hospital the last couple of weeks.
Overheard 2 calls from my desk. Be like, he's in the ER again?
Yeah, it was quite a week at our household. But Charlie, my eldest, is like just constantly asking questions. He's at that age, and it is really challenging trying to explain what is going on in the world to a 5-year-old who is starting to get it. And I have been, we live in Los Angeles. The ICE raids are everywhere. And I am like dreading the moment when he asks about that, and he hasn't yet. But even, he's very obsessed with the weather and storms. And so he was asking all about Hurricane Melissa that was hitting Jamaica, and he's asking all about hurricanes and what happens. And he goes, well, if the people in Jamaica needed help, he's like, maybe they could come here. He's like, would we have them here? And I'm like, in the past we would. Yeah. I'm like, we don't now. And he's like, why not? I'm like, Donald Trump doesn't really like offering people the chance to come here anymore. He's like, well, why is that? And I'm like, and I try to avoid too being like, he's a bad person. Or be like, he does bad things, right? Because I'm also cognizant of the fact that I want to raise kids who are generous and kind and see like a different conception of what it means to be strong and what it means to love your country, than what they're seeing from Donald Trump. So I want to be like, oh, here's the orange man, he's awful. But it's hard to explain why these people do the things they do and the decisions that they make.
I think a lot about how is he doing all this, right? Like, how are their ICE agents running around LA disappearing people? Mm-hmm. And some of it is the success of Republicans operationalizing the dehumanization. And what was promised to their voters was the worst of the worst would be deported. People who would commit violent crimes. It takes them like 20 minutes to do much, much, much more than that. And I wonder, is rehumanization, is making sure that people realize these aren't the worst of the worst. If it were, we'd hear all about it. I mean, Trump doesn't do anything secretly, not even the bad things. That's why we know about the strikes. But he definitely doesn't do anything good in secret. I mean, there would be like show deportations if they really were the worst. We would all know about it. How do you make people care about, or how do you make more people care? Or how do you persuade the people who are indifferent to, one, understand the facts that these are not the worst of the worst? I mean, how do you make people care at a human level about the things that are happening?
I think it's where the individual stories are so important. When André Hernandez Romero was sent to Socotra, and we saw the images and heard the story about him crying for his mom and getting his head shaved and slapped and beaten, and then saw photos of this man who was openly gay makeup artist, and we were told that he was in a gang because he had a tattoo. I think that just like laid bare how idiotic and wrong and immoral and frankly evil that policy was, and it shook people. And I think you've seen similar things recently, like when a bunch of ICE agents in Chicago shot a priest who was asking them to pray in the head with a pepper ball. Like there's no explaining that. There's no spinning that away. Trisha McLaughlin can lie and go on TV and say whatever nonsense. But like when ICE is cracking the ribs of a 60-year-old man who's just trying to drive home from a jog, like people, when they hear that story, know what's wrong. I think the statistics just wash over your head and no one cares or can contextualize them. It's these individual stories that are powerful. And that's where I think like you come in, we come in, the media comes in, just lifting these things up so it gets to people.
But I also think Democratic leaders have to not be afraid to talk about this. And I get the polling. I have been steeped in it. I know the immigration polling. I know the politics of immigration. I know how difficult it is. But the advice from your median Democratic strategist pollster remains, it's not our best issue, and cost of living is, and that's what more people care about. And I think that is true in a period of normal politics. And I think we are not in a period of normal politics anymore. And rehumanization is actually that needs to be a goal of ours now, because we are dealing with an authoritarian threat where they are trying to dehumanize people. Look, there is a difference between people saying, I support tighter border security, more asylum restrictions, no public benefits at all for non-citizens. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not surprised that those things are popular. Those things are not, do you support federal agents, masked armed federal agents in the street, shooting pepper balls at priests, breaking people's ribs, and disappearing people. And I get that there's not a lot of research about those polling questions because it hasn't happened in the country before. So like we're operating as if like it's normal times, and it's not. And I do think that like if the polling and the strategy started reflecting what's actually happening, I think you would see that more people would be appalled by this if you ask them, and then maybe that would give Democratic politicians a little bit more courage to talk about these issues just as much as they talk about healthcare and other really important cost of living issues.
I guess my last question is, are you optimistic, and if you are, of what happening? Like, how do you think this ends?
I don't feel that optimistic. I can't lie to you. It's a little worrisome. I'm very concerned about the weaponization of the Justice Department. I'm very worried about the people in charge of election security and integrity and what they're planning to do, and the possibility of the Voting Rights Act getting thrown out, and just Republicans gerrymandering a bunch of districts to hell that are currently represented by Democrats. I think, though, like the only way out is through, and the only way out is all of us coming together, uniting, putting away the kind of intra-Democratic Party or intra-pro-democracy factionalism that can sometimes spill out, right? Like we all know the frustrating feeling of the fact that the 2016 Democratic primary has never ended. We are still fighting about it today. Those scars are deep and lasting, and it is bad. But I think when you look around the world at the way authoritarian movements are defeated, it's by creating the biggest coalition possible and those people organizing and marching and hitting the streets. And the No Kings protests was a start of that, but we got to keep it up.
Yeah, I think there's only two choices: give up and keep fighting. And choosing to give up sort of guarantees, if enough people do it, that the worst outcome happens. And it also means that if you give up on this, that other people are making decisions that are going to affect your life, and you're not even part of that. And fighting gives you a chance, and it has throughout history. And so it's taken me 44 years now to understand the cliche that you're supposed to take one day at a time and sort of like live in the present. But that is what I've been trying to do, especially in this second Trump term, is not doom about the future, not dream about the future, but basically just say we are going to get through each day. We are going to try to convince more people, persuade more people, and we're going to see what happens. And, like Tommy said, you go out to No Kings and you see a bunch of other people and you're like, okay, we're not alone. This is good, and I think that building that muscle, that's going to sustain us beyond just election to election, because I think we are past just going from cycle to cycle right now. What will get us out of this is a movement, and a movement that is sustained, that is fearless, and that that's not going to back down. And I think that building that movement is probably going to take way more than just one election cycle, even a presidential cycle. So I think we're all in it for the long haul, but I think that if we keep fighting, that there's a chance we can get out of this.
I think the world of everything you guys create, and I'm so honored that you had time to talk to me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
I feel the same about you. Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Take care.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to share that Crooked Con is happening. It's a gathering of the, quote, smartest organizers and least annoying politicians. They're all strategizing, debating, and commiserating about where we go from here. It's happening November 6th and 7th in Washington, D.C., and tickets are on sale right now.